Thank you for joining the Financial Brokerage webinar today on Meet Top-Level Prospects with Event Marketing and Target Marketing with Bill Cates, the Referral Coach. The session is about to begin. There will be a question and answer period throughout the webinar. All questions must be typed. This can be done at the bottom of the control panel on your screen. On behalf of Financial Brokerage, I'd like to welcome all the webinar participants today. I'm Justin Reeves, Sales Manager in the Life Department at Financial Brokerage, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Financial Brokerage is the home of the independent producer, providing fixed, annuity, life, long-term care, and disability insurance for agents nationwide. Today's webinar topic, Meet Top-Level Producers with Event Marketing and Target Marketing. Bill Cates is widely recognized as the financial services foremost expert in how to build a thriving referral-based business. His books, Get More Referrals Now and Don't Keep Me a Secret, have revolutionized the way many financial professionals are acquiring more and better clients through referrals and other relationships marketing strategies. Bill is the president of the Referral Coach International and the creator of the Referral Advantage program and the Referral Champions system. Bill's referral system has been featured in such publications as Success Magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine, Selling Power, and the Wall Street Journal. And his own business success has been featured in Money Magazine. Thousands of financial professionals are using Bill's referral system to build their practice with quality referrals. You can also expect to receive powerful and practical strategies that will have an immediate impact on your business. Welcome, Bill.
Great. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're ready to take some notes. This is going to be a very practical, tactical kind of session. And let's go ahead and get, oh, by the way, we will be taking questions digitally. So just if you have a question as we go, type it into the little question box. Every now and then I'll check with Justin and see if anybody's asked a question. And we'll make sure your questions get answered. My email address is bill@referralcoach.com, bill@referralcoach.com. If you have questions or comments later that you didn't think of while we were delivering the program, then just stay in touch with me. I'm happy to help any way I can. So, why is event marketing what is event marketing and why is it important? I think that here are some of the benefits of event marketing and why I believe you should consider doing it. Number one, you get to meet prospects in a low-key social atmosphere. There's no pressure. They're not expected to make a decision to work with you. They don't have to reveal their financial situation to a perfect stranger. Sometimes with high-level prospects, their thinking is, George likes you and trusts you, well, I like you and trust you. And so having an opportunity to meet prospects in a social environment is one of the best ways to do that. I suspect a lot of folks watching this webinar already know that. That's why you're here. It's a more comfortable way. They don't have to make a decision. They don't have to reveal their personal financial matters, etc. You can meet higher-level prospects because of this, and then later the business process starts at a higher level of trust, right? So instead of starting the business meeting or the business part of the relationship off cold, you started out with some warmth there. You've already gotten to know each other a little bit. They already like you, trust you a little bit, and so you've started a higher point once you start talking business. They're more willing to answer your questions. They're more willing to reveal their financial situation, their dreams, their big picture thinking. Everything gets easier because of you've met socially first, and it's also just a very fun way to do business. I'll be sharing with you some specific examples of what some advisors have done. Nelson Simoes is an advisor in Canada. He's number 2 in his firm out of 5,000 advisors. He got there in 9 years, and he did it through personal introductions, through introductions over meals. And what's happened is it's worked so well. He bought a cabin. A lot of lakes in Canada. A lot of people go to cabins in the summer, and he bought a cabin, and almost all summer, this past summer, he entertained clients and their guests, and just met so many people in a social way to do it. He had a blast. He was at his cabin a lot, enjoyed it, and did some business at the same time. So it's a fun way to do business. Now, different types of event marketing, and there are referral events, which is different than a client appreciation event, and I'll share with you in a few minutes the distinction between a referral event and a client appreciation event. I believe you should do both, but the referral event is for the purpose of referrals. Philanthropic or community service events, we could lump these into one category. Philanthropic, I usually think in terms of events related to the theater, to the symphony, to high-level charity profiles, the Kidney Institute, American Cancer Society, kind of the high-level stuff that happens in most metropolitan areas. Community service events, usually smaller type situations. It could be with a service club. It could be a Habitat for Humanity, just cleaning up a side of a highway. Kind of, I don't want to say lower level events, but more localized kind of events. Celebration events is a strategy that many advisors are using that many advisors haven't even really heard about or thought about. And I'm going to give you some great examples of how you can use celebration events to meet high-level prospects that turn into high-level clients. Educational events, most people watching this webinar have probably done some sort of educational event, but we're going to talk about how, add a few more elements to make it more effective for you. Affinity groups, Porsche Owners Club, Polo Club. Many of your clients belong to different types of clubs and affinity groups. Obviously, an investment club would be a perfect venue for you to deliver a seminar, but there's a lot of ways to tap into affinity groups. So we'll cover all of these today. Now, here's a distinction I want to make between a client appreciation event and a referral event. Many advisors will tell their clients, hey, we're having a client appreciation event next month. It's a wine and cheese tasting, or it's a dinner, or whatever it is, and feel free to bring a guest. And that's pretty much how they set it up. And the problem is they haven't really been clear with the client that the purpose of this event is for introductions, to meet people. So usually not enough prospects come, guests come, and the people who do come aren't necessarily interested or qualified to work with you. So I'm a big believer in client appreciation events. I think you should have events just to say thank you to your clients. And that builds the business friendship. It solidifies the loyalty. It's great. But if you really want guests to come, well, you got to make sure you tell them that you want guests to come. So the language would go a little something like this. Justin, and this could be over the phone. Many of our clients like to introduce the work we do to others. And, we found one of the best ways to do this, and it's kind of a low-key social environment where we're not really talking business. So I just want to let you know we're sending an invitation out to you. We're going to have a wine tasting in about 6 weeks. You can consider the day kind of a hold-the-date phone call. See if you can identify one or two people or some couples that you think should be aware of the work we do, and we can meet them in this low-key, fun social environment. I know they'll have a great time. We'll get to know each other a little bit. Then down the road, if they're interested in getting together to talk a little business, we can certainly do this. We're not going to. There's no sales pitch here. Just low-key, fun, meet some new people. So we'll send the invite to you, and then we'll follow up a week or so after to see if you can make it and who you'd like to bring along. Now, your language might change a little bit, but that's the essence of telling them exactly what's going on. The purpose of this event is for introductions. And you'll have some clients who want to do this, some clients who don't want to do it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But the ones who do will do it right, and they'll bring people who are interested. If the nature of your business is as you want to be very careful who they bring, you want to make sure that these people fit your criteria, fit the processes you like to bring to bear on your client relationships, then you want to have that conversation a little bit too. And you want to say, Justin, just as you're thinking about who you might like to bring along, let me share with you the kinds of folks that we're doing our best work for these days, that our processes that we have in place are geared towards. And the people much like yourself tend to have $250,000 or more of investable assets, tend to have combined incomes of, et cetera, whatever the numbers are for you. Everybody on this call is going to be different numbers. But if you need them to bring people who are not just interested but also qualified to work with you, you need to make sure you have that conversation. We should never be afraid to talk about who our practice is geared towards. We should never be afraid to talk about the money part of that, the income, investable assets, net worth, whatever numbers are important to you is what should be brought up here so you get the right kind of people. All right? So now you're going to have people who are at least somewhat interested in meeting you, and we know they're somewhat qualified for the work that you do. So when you have folks there, they're going to be the right kind of folks. So referral events, what kind of referral events? What are some of the rules around this? I have what I call the 10 commandments of referral events. Let's just go to them. Party with a purpose. What I mean by this is really what I just covered. Be clear. What is the purpose of this event? Is the purpose of this event is to just gather with some clients and just appreciate the relationship and celebrate it and build business friendships? Well, that's fine. And if they bring guests, great. If not, no big deal. Just be clear, right? If the purpose of the event is for introductions, well, be clear. Be clear first with yourself, and then be clear with your clients. You heard me start with the verbal invitation. I kind of like a call, mail, call kind of situation where we start verbally, we mail the invite. Generally speaking, you want to think in terms of an invite that you actually mail in the mail as opposed to an email invite. Email invites sometimes don't get through spam filters. Sometimes they don't get opened in the way that we want them to be opened. So if you have an event, you want to make it a little classy, I recommend an invitation. It doesn't have to be a formal invitation like a wedding invitation that a lot of folks use for seminars. It can be a fun invitation. It can be colorful. It can be party-like. It can be more creative. In fact, I've seen a ton of different types of creative invitations. I've seen where people hire local artists, starving artists to do something. They work pretty cheap and they create some very creative stuff. If you have a theme to the event, you could have something go along with it, some sort of little gift, like if there's a golf theme, for instance, to the event. Part of the invitation could be a sleeve of golf balls. There's a lot of different ways to become very creative. So you call them, you let them know what's coming, you have them hold a date, then you send the invite, and then you follow up afterwards. And I believe the initial call should come from you. I believe the follow-up call could come from a staff member. But the initial call should come from you. It could be a voicemail. It doesn't have to be an actual conversation, but I think it should be coming from your voice and from you. By the way, just in general, for any kind of events, even educational events, if you want certain clients to attend, if you want a good attendance, you should think in terms of calling people up. I'll give you an example. My financial advisor, Larry Briskin, puts on events, educational events from time to time, and I get an email invite from him, and sometimes I'll open it, sometimes I won't. I'm thinking, who's got time for this? But one time he called me. He says, Bill, we've got a speaker coming. He's going to be talking about the kind of investments that you've been making, and he's a great speaker. I think you'll really get a lot out of it. I think, if you can come, we'd love to have you there. And guess what? I went to the event. Why? Because I got a personal invitation. I got a verbal invitation from Larry. It made it more personal than just something that was, sent to all his clients via email. Vary your events. You can have some, some signature events maybe that you do every year. Maybe you do a holiday party every year. I know an advisor in Texas goes to the racetrack every year, or some people do a golf event every year. But, not everybody drinks wine. Not everybody plays golf. Not everybody likes to go to the racetrack. Whatever it is, think about having maybe a few standard things and then vary your events. In fact, talk to your clients about ideas. Let them know you're planning on doing this. Let them know you're going to continue doing this sort of thing. Have they been to any venues? Have they been to any other types of events that they think might be interesting? And quite often you get a lot of great ideas. I have heard from several advisors over the last couple of years who have done this and talked to their clients about the events. And some of their clients have said, well, we love to entertain. We're always looking for an excuse. We would love to host an event for you. And they host an event in the client's house, and the neighbors come and colleagues from work come. And usually the advisor helps pay for this, right? Sometimes with help from a mutual fund sponsor or something like that. But you want to put out a very events. And by the way, finding unique and creative venues, this is where your clients come in and help you with this. You got to be consistent with this. Your first couple events, if you haven't done them, may not be as successful as you'd like them to be. Because I found with a lot of practices, the clientele has to get used to you doing this. And once they get used to it, then it becomes easier to attract people to these things. Get your clients to think of themselves as a host. So, for instance, if you have a client that's inviting a number of guests, maybe you're doing a dinner and they're inviting 3 or 4 couples, right? They're the host too, aren't they? Right? It's not just you, but it's them because they're inviting everybody. So you want to say to them, Judy, Bob, you guys are every bit of the hosts as I am. Yeah, I'm picking up the tab for this, of course, but But as you invite people, as you talk to people, could you say that my advisor and I, or we, are hosting an event with our advisor? I found that when the invitation comes really from you and you are the host of the event, people get more excited about it. People are more likely to say yes. Can you do that? And of course, they'll say, of course. And so whenever you can, encourage your clients to think of themselves as the host and make the invitations coming from them, not just from you, and that becomes a very powerful invitation. Very key point here, smaller events are usually better than larger events for a few reasons. Look, the reason why we do events, the reason why we do client appreciation events is to connect with people, right? It's not just to wave at people. It's not just to impress them. We can spend all this money on this big holiday party. It's to connect with these folks, whether it's just clients or clients and guests. And so the larger the event, the thinner the connection. The smaller the event, the better the connection. So any kind of event that you put on, and I'll be sharing some ideas for you in a minute, we always have to think in terms of connection. Is this event going to help or hinder making a good connection? If it's a bigger event, what can we add to it to help create the connection? Also, with smaller events, they're easier to put on. If you haven't done much of this, it's not going to absorb so much time and thought. You're more likely to think through all the details with smaller events. And I found you can usually see the fruits of your labor more quickly, more easily from a smaller event. So whether it's referrals or whether it's more business that you might do with these people, that happens more easily, more apparently from smaller events than it does larger events. So smaller is almost always better. Pay attention to details, and one of the things you might consider doing is hiring a meeting planner the first couple of times. There's a lot of freelancers out there. They're not very expensive, especially relative to your other expenses and the return on investment that you can have in this sort of thing. There's special events planners, there are meeting planners. They handle the details. They also can anticipate problems that you might not anticipate. So I'll give you a couple examples. One advisor I was working with did an event at a really nice restaurant. They had a couple of smaller rooms that they use for events, and never really checked with the manager or the coordinator about this, who was going to be next door. Had a very young group next door, very raucous. Not only did it create problems for the restaurant, it definitely created problems for their event, and because they didn't bother to ask who's going to be in the other room. So meeting planners think about this sort of stuff. Another advisor I was talking to had a situation where he scoped out the restaurant during the day. He and his assistant went over there during the day just to make sure they felt good about using the venue. Didn't go at night, and what they didn't realize is the parking lot wasn't very well lit. It's a bit of a walk. Some of their older clients complained about this. By the way, if you're doing kind of a neat high-level event, you're working with higher-level prospects, and you have an older couple or a couple that you want to treat extra special, send them a car. Hire a town car. I haven't picked up. I already mentioned this. Maintaining consistency will help you be successful over time. And this is a pretty critical one as well. Follow up within 24 to 48 hours. We found that while the relationship magic happens at the event, the connection happens at the event, the results are produced after the event. So for client appreciation events, just call your clients up the next day and say, hey, how did you enjoy the the program? Any ideas for when we might do another one? And this is where sometimes business gets talked about, where they have an idea they want to run by you. And I certainly appreciate you doing this. It really cements the relationship. Obviously, if there were guests, if this was a referral event, then this is where you call the guests. The guests get a good feeling from you, and they begin to like you and trust you. Well, you want to follow up within 24 to 48 hours, so make sure you carve out time. And I do believe it should be you, the advisor, following up and not the assistant. Now, what you could do, if you get the voicemail of the prospect who was at the event, you can leave a voicemail, and you can say, expect to hear from my assistant, Jennifer, tomorrow, and to set up a time when we can talk. So you can get the assistant involved, but the initial call, the initial contact, even if it's on a voicemail, should be from you. And I tell you, I've been teaching my system for 17 years, and when you get referrals, whether they're at an event or someone gave you referrals at a meeting, whether you asked for them or not, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you are the one who makes the initial phone call and not the assistant. You do not hand it over to the assistant, at least not initially. you're the one who maintains that contact at the beginning or initiates the contact. So those are the 10, commandments of around an event, and we're going to get into some events. But let me just take a sip of water and ask Justin any questions coming over the transom yet.
So far, so good.
Okay, guys. So please don't hesitate to ask questions. Holiday parties, pretty classic. This tends to violate the notion of a smaller event. I'm not saying you shouldn't do this, but just be realistic, right? Be realistic of what's going to happen. If you want your clients to bring guests, be realistic that you're not going to have a chance to connect to these guests very well if it's a larger event. One thing you might consider doing is having a couple of smaller parties. I know this sounds like a lot more work, but really if you cut it in half and you do one weekend, one another weekend, what you'll end up with is better connections, and that's the key. Now, if you have a holiday party where you're just kind of encouraging clients to bring guests but not really expecting them to, well, certainly you can make a point of connecting with all the guests in a better way. But you won't connect with your clients that well, so just something to consider. Same thing with summer picnics. This is a lot of fun. I've seen advisors do this. I've seen advisors rent movie theaters where they invite their clients and the neighbors and their guests in. And it's fine. It's a lot of fun. You just have to be realistic about what is going to happen. I know some advisors a little bit newer in the business don't have a big budget to spend on this sort of thing. So what they'll do is they'll make it a potluck. They'll rent a moon bounce and they'll make it a potluck where clients bring stuff. And if they have a couple of cool things for kids, then the clients get involved. So there's no real rules here. The main guideline is make sure you facilitate connections and you follow up afterwards. Now, sporting events. A lot of advisors like to take clients to sporting events, and I think that's great. But let's understand the connection thing here. If you're sitting in the stands, how many people are you going to connect to? One person on your right, one person on your left. That's pretty much it. Unless you have a tailgating before the event, after the event, meet at a restaurant near the ballpark before the event, then you have a chance to connect with everybody. Obviously, if you're sitting in the mezzanine or a luxury suite or box, then it's a little easier to connect with everybody. So think in terms of, is this event going to help me connect? Is it going to hinder connections? What do I need to add to the event to make it more of a connection? So like tailgating before or at the event certainly helps with that. Wine tastings, when I'm talking about small, by the way, wine tastings I'm thinking probably a dozen to 20, give or take, is about the maximum number of people you want to have there. It can be larger than a dinner, but because you're milling around and standing around, and it's easier to connect with folks in that regard because you're not seated. But still, you want to keep it pretty cozy, pretty easy to put on. Most wine stores, good wine stores, have connections with enophiles, right? These are wine experts who will help you put on a program like this. Cheese, no cheese, chocolate could be added, all that sort of stuff. If you don't want to go the alcohol route, and I know some advisors don't, then you can make it a chocolate tasting. And I've been to a couple of these where they have bring an expert in chocolate, and they talk about the history of chocolate, which is fascinating, how chocolate used to be a beverage and it was bitter and it was a beverage of the aristocracy, and then eventually somebody spilled some sugar into it and it changed over time. And usually these experts will bring a lot of different chocolates to taste, and it can be a very fun event. A fine dining chef's table, it's either in the kitchen or has a view on the kitchen. Now, I don't really like this photo too well because you can see this is an oval, and I think that whenever possible, if you're doing a dinner type of event, it's one table. That means like what, 8 to 12 people max, and it's a round table because you're going to connect better. When you're sitting here on this corner and it's rectangular or oval, it's hard to connect with that person over there. It's a little easier with an oval than a rectangle, but still not as good. So again, we're always thinking in terms of connections, right? Now, golf outings, a lot of people like to do golf outings, and that's fine. But if you're playing golf, you're going to connect with the other two people in your foursome, but that's about it. So I want to encourage you to think of maybe doing golf lessons. It's a very popular thing to do. It's more affordable to do. You bring a golf pro either to a club or to your backyard or a client's backyard, and you have a mat there, and they do a little bit of a lesson, and they do a swing analysis, and everybody there gets their swing analyzed by the pro. They're not very expensive to put on. Maybe you have a barbecue, maybe you have some wine and beer if you want. And what happens is the guests go, wow, my advisor never do anything like this, and that's where you build some nice relationships with folks. Boat outings, most metropolitan areas have either a river or a lake or a bay or something where they do boat outings, and so you book a thing on the boat. Mary Beth Kosmeski, a colleague of mine, has a little program she teaches her advisors called Don't Miss the Boat, and basically the admission to the boat ride is a client or a client couple, or a prospect or a prospect couple, and her advisors advertise this, don't miss the boat, and they do very well. Now, obviously, whatever you choose has to fit your clientele, has to fit your personality. Don't miss the boat is kind of a fun thing. If you're not fun, don't try a fun thing, right? Now let's get into some more creative things. David Vanderzee is an Olympic-style caliber skier in New England, and he puts on ski trips for his clients, and he helps organize the ski trips, and they invite guests, and he goes and rides the bus with everybody, so he gets to connect with people on the bus going up and coming back. So he attends to the connections. On the bus, he raffles off a lot of stuff. He gets equipment from some suppliers occasionally, and gets some gift certificates from some restaurants. And so on the bus ride up and the bus ride back, he's having a lot of fun with these folks and connecting, raffling certain things. Cooking classes have become very popular. What's neat about cooking classes is that you get to really schmooze with folks. So Jeff Chaddick is an advisor in Dayton, Ohio, and Jeff told me one of the best events he's ever done is a sushi rolling class, because it's not something most people have ever done, and they wouldn't even think about doing it, and so it has a long mental shelf life. People will go to the event, and they'll learn how to do this, and every time they go out and have sushi, if they're with a different couple or a different set of guests, they'll say, hey, I took a sushi rolling class. I learned to make that. I learned to make that. Don't eat that. You don't want to know what goes into that. That sort of thing. So it has a long mental shelf life, which is a good thing to think about. I mentioned the guy in Texas does a racetrack. Has a lot of fun with that. Valentine's luncheon, fairly common thing to do. It could be for all your single female clients, widows, usually a lunch, so it doesn't detract from your ability to be with your spouse on the evening of Valentine's Day, or their things that they might have. So this is certainly a great thing. This could be just clients, it could be just an appreciation lunch, or it could be a guest. I've seen advisors do it both. In fact, all of these events really translate equally as well to a pure client appreciation event or a referral event. I mentioned Jeff Chaddick earlier. One of the most creative things I've ever seen is he held a balloon festival. Now, the balloons did not take off like these. They were all tethered, which made it much safer. But he got a local artist, actually a quadriplegic artist, who painted with his mouth, with a brush in his mouth, and is quite good. And he designed the invitations. He designed some of the signage. And then what happened is the media got a hold of it, and they started promoting this in the local newspaper that he was doing this and using this artist, and it just took on a life of its own. He ended up having T-shirts from this artist with the artist's artwork, and it created quite a big deal. And in a smaller community, in a smaller city, that can be a pretty powerful thing to help you create your reputation. If you have a hobby, if you have an interest, if you're good at something, build events around that. If you love fishing, do a fly fishing event. If you love bowling, do bowling. If you're a great golfer, that's where golf comes in. Tennis, whatever it is, whatever affinity you have and talent you may have, then build the events around that. And that allows that affinity, that expertise, that passion of yours to come out. I've seen some advisors where they're the wine experts and they do a wine tasting and the advisor leads the whole thing because he or she knows enough about the event. I was actually talking to a client a couple of weeks ago where this firm put on a wine tasting event, and the wine expert didn't show up. And the marketing manager of the firm knew enough about wine where she took over, and she did the event and pulled it off quite nicely. So having a backup maybe is not a bad idea. So let's switch over to philanthropic and community service events. Different things, casino night, can be great, usually a bigger event, benefiting a charity. Here, the neat thing about community service events and philanthropic events is not only do you get to build business friendships with your clients and meet some guests, but you get to help a worthy cause. And so there's that extra kicker of value and specialness of the event. Because not only are you doing this neat thing, but you're also helping some folks in the process. Habitat for Humanity, I've run into several advisors who do this. They love it because they're there over 2 to 2.5 days building a home for a worthy family, and you really get to connect with people when you're doing this sort of stuff. And one of the advisors told me, he said, the worse the weather, the better. And I said, tell me about that. He says, well, if it rains or snows or whatever, it's more of a bonding experience. We go through this incredible adventure together, and we all bond and we stay in touch. And he's had a number of weekends where he really has stayed in touch with a lot of these folks and has gotten clients out of it. Now, if it's just an appreciation event, you're not really looking for clients, but it happens sometimes. If it's an event where clients are bringing guests, then, of course, it becomes a referral event. Adopt a Highway, similar situation. Clients love to bring their families, their kids to help, instill the value of community service. And usually on the front end or the back end, you serve them lunch, you have some beverages along the way. Can be a lot of fun and of course, helping a worthy situation. All right, I'm going to take a sip of water. Justin, anything bubbling up?
You must be doing a fabulous job, no questions.
I guess, we'll see. Celebration events. So let me tell you about Joe DeSena. Joe DeSena puts on retirement parties, and here's how the conversation goes. He'll call up his client, Bob, and say, hey, Bob, you're retiring in a few months. We want to help you celebrate. And Bob says, great. What do you have in mind? Well, we want to throw a party for you. Send me a guest list, up to 40 people, and we'll invite everybody. We'll handle all the details, and you just show up as a guest of honor. And Bob goes, wow, that's great. Thank you. I'll get you a list. Now, you're thinking 40 people. That sounds like a lot, and it is, I guess. But, Joe didn't start out with 40. He started out with a couple of couples. And then he saw how it worked and how it started to lead to new business. And he settled on 40 as kind of the optimal number. And so what's going on is he and his staff are inviting all the guests, and these are neighbors, these are colleagues, and all of these people are seeing that the advisor is hosting this party, not the client, not the client's spouse, not a colleague at work, but the financial advisor is putting on this event. And so at the event, the client stands up and puts his arm around Joe's shoulder and says, I wouldn't be retiring right now if it wasn't for Joe and great work he's done. Not only has he been a great advisor, as you could see from this event, he's also been a great friend. And Joe tells me that's when it starts. Psst, Joe, come here. You got a card? Yeah, I would love to talk to you about our situation. My advisor, cheapskate, never do anything like this. Now, Joe's minimum, I believe, is about $500,000 of investable assets is the minimum. He averages 7 new clients every time he does an event. Events pays for itself several times over. What happens is the clients see the kind of person the advisor is, the kind of relationship they have with the client, and they want that sort of thing. They like that sort of thing. They like the business friendship. And he says sometimes he's put on events, he's gotten a few clients right away, and then 6 months, 9 months later, he gets a call from someone who was at the event, totally forgot about this person. The prospect was ready to move forward with some planning and investments and insurance, etc. So it's worked so well, now he has clients that have small businesses, and if they have a new product, a new service, a new venture that they're introducing to the market, he'll come and help them celebrate. So the genius of this, I believe, is that, and you know this, to build your practice with more clients, you have to meet more people. So he's meeting more people that aren't in a referral mode. It's more of just a celebration mode. Birthday parties. I was in Red Bank, New Jersey several months ago, and I was speaking to a small group there, and I suggested, that you call your clients up, and I say, look, call your client up, let them know that you want us to help them celebrate their birthday, have them invite a couple of employees or executives from their company or whatever, and, you're just going to say, just celebrate. Just have a little birthday lunch together. It's not a sales meeting. It's not a referral event per se. It's a celebration event. There's one woman there, Red Bank, did it. First event she did. Client invited 3 guests. There was 5 of them at the lunch. And one of the guys at the end says, I'd love to talk to you about our situation. Became a client, brought $1.3 million into our business just by doing a luncheon. she could do another 10 more luncheons, and she's already had that lunch paid for many times. So anniversaries, your clients have an anniversary, invite them and maybe a couple of couples just to celebrate. So a lot of different ways you can use these celebration events to meet new people. I already told you about Joe DeSena. I forgot I had a slide there. So all kinds of ways you can use this. Educational events. Now, I was working with Nelson Simoes, an advisor in Canada, and one of the things that Nelson does is, I told you about him earlier, I had the guy who did the cabin. He does 4 educational events a year, and he noticed that with educational events, clients would show up for the education, guests would show up for the education, but he didn't really connect with them real well. They'd come, they'd sit down, he'd do his thing, and then they'd leave. So he started adding a social component to create better connections to the people who attended. So for instance, he has a restaurant he likes to use. They have lawn bowling out front, and he encourages people to come early, have a cocktail on him, and they do a little lawn bowling, and he gets to schmooze and meet with people that way. He's done some chocolate appreciation after the event. Didn't want to do alcohol after the event, people driving, so he did a little chocolate appreciation after that. So just not everyone stays for it, but most of them do. And he builds it into the timing of the event, and so he gets better connections, right? So we're always thinking of connections. How can we connect with our clients? How can we connect with the guests of our clients? And I mentioned affinity groups, lots of different types of affinity groups, model train collector groups, bicycling, cycling, all kinds of groups out there. You can produce a seminar, educational event for these folks. You can do something social for these folks. You have the member of this group who is your client who brings you in. They look like a hero because they put on a pretty cool event with you. And again, you meet people. And I know one advisor who did this with, he was in Cleveland, and dentists who ride Harley Davidsons. One of his clients was a dentist, and he rode a Harley, and apparently in a lot of metropolitan areas there are groups of dentists who ride Harleys. And so he put on a little event for these folks. He rode a Harley. Now they invite him to all their rides. He's kind of an honorary member, and he's done a lot of business with folks in this group just because he tapped into this affinity group. So are you thinking about this? Are you thinking about tapping into these groups? It's a great way to build a business. So I'm going to get into targeting niche markets in a second. Justin, any questions bubbling up?
So far, so good.
Okie dokie. So many advisors have tapped into this. They've learned that it's much easier to create a reputation for themselves within a niche than being kind of shotgun approach to marketing. All right, so what are the benefits? Why do you want to leverage a target market? Well, it's easier to identify high-level prospects, whether it's owners and executives of businesses within a specific industry, like restaurant owners or the printing industry or manufacturing or hotel or whatever, hospitality, or it can be employees within a specific company. I know one advisor, one of the top advisors in his firm in a Midwest town. There's a large employer there, and he's become the advisor of choice there. He has a newsletter, a weekly newsletter specifically devoted to the employees of this company. He knows their retirement plan. He knows their benefits package inside and out, and so he provides more value. Carol Holm was the first woman to ever lead New York Life in sales. And the year she led New York Life in sales, she had $840,000 of first-year commissions. That's a pretty good year. And in a town of 10,000 people, Blackfoot, Idaho, how did she do it? Well, there was a niche there. There was a nuclear power plant with a lot of high-paid engineers. She became the advisor of choice. You can identify all the players. It's easier to provide more value because you know their world better. You know their bonus structure, you know their benefits package, you know their retirement package, et cetera. So it's easier to bring more value because you know more about their situation. Therefore, it's easier to get appointments because you bring that perceived value immediately. When you're an expert in their situation and their industry, initially it's more perceived value, and then as they start to work with you, they realize it's more real value. You get a higher conversion ratio because you start out at a higher level of trust. And obviously client acquisition gets easier, and ultimately it's easier to create a reputation. These groups have formal and informal ways of communicating with each other. A lot of things you can do to create that write for their newsletters, speak at events. When they see in niches, when the niche sees that you're focusing on the niche, referrals just become, unsolicited referrals become more natural. It's just easier for people to do it. There's just a dynamic that takes place. I've done that within this in financial services industry because of that. So some characteristics of a good target market: significant commonality, whether it's in industry, occupation, ethnic background, hobbies, which would be like affinity groups, age, gender. They got to have formal and informal ways of communication. So an age, just an age by itself, quite often isn't enough to be a real powerful niche, because they don't necessarily have formal and informal communication. But if there are people within a common retirement community or an over 50 community, then now they have newsletters, they have educational opportunities. It's easier to target that sort of thing. So genders, a lot of folks will target women. Okay, well, women, that's a pretty big niche, right? It's over half of our society. But what about divorced or widowed women? Right now, we're targeting a little more. Usually, the more targeted, the better. Let me stop for a second and I found that one of the #1 fears of why people don't target niches, don't go after niche markets, is out of fear. Their concern is, if I just go after this group, this niche, then I'll give up everything else, all the other opportunity that's out there. And the answer to that is yes, that's true. You may very well give up all that other opportunity, but you'll be so successful in a niche that you won't even notice. You won't even notice that and you don't have to have all of your activity be within a niche. It could be just part of it. Financial capacity, obviously, they have to fit. Most of the people in this niche have to fit the work that you do. So let me give you a few examples of some target markets: business owners, executives in the same industry. I know one advisor has done very well with restaurant owners. Another advisor I mentioned earlier does very well with Procter & Gamble. Mickey Rosenzweig, very successful advisor in New York, has done very well with physicians. Physicians are interesting because they're kind of a tough nut to crack. It's really hard to reach physicians, but once you reach a few, and they like to do business with other people who are using people in their niche. My advisor, Larry Briskin, does a lot of work with attorneys, and they're kind of a fraternity, so they like the fact that he focuses on attorneys. Let's see, Claude, we've talked about this sort of stuff. Anything like this where you can form a relationship. You may have a niche already growing in your book of business. All you have to do is formalize it a little bit more. I found that when some people come into this business, they neglect where they used to work. They neglect that natural market that they brought with them. And I would suggest that you want to go back and tap into that. That can become your niche. You may just have 1 or 2 clients who you're working with. You really like them. You like the work they do. It seems to be a good fit. You say, hey, I was thinking that maybe I should target more, owners of printing companies. You probably know some others. You're part of the industry association. Oh yeah. What do you think about that? If I did it, would you be able to open a few doors for me? And then the client says, yeah, sure, happy to. So you talk to your clients about this, and sometimes they'll help you get to this. So here's some elements of a plan that you might want to bring to life in terms of creating that reputation within the niche. I told you have to take a lot of notes. Obviously you want to identify the members of your natural market who can lead you to a target market. Who do you know within your client base, outside of your client base? Who do you know that can potentially lead you? By the way, another thing to think about, if you have like an interest. So for instance, I know an advisor who's a musician decided not to try to make it as a professional musician, but loves music, and so he's become an advisor for musicians and music professors and teachers and some very successful musicians, as well as recording studios in this area. So he's allowed to be in that music business without being in the music business. Another, Andre Duffy in Wilmington, Delaware, is an advisor who's an athlete. Couldn't make it as a professional athlete, but loved sports. and he's finally gotten certified to do work for professional athletes to help them, because they sometimes get some pretty lousy advice and they don't always follow the instructions of their advisors that they do have, and he's trying to help clean up that world a little bit in terms of financial advice. And so he's around athletes, he's around sports, he gets all kinds of great tickets to lots of sporting events, and he's doing the great work that he does in terms of a financial advisor. So we marketing surveys this is where you can go to your clients and learn more about the market. When I first got started in the speaking business, I actually targeted the printing industry because I owned a book publishing company, and so I knew about buying and selling printing. And so I interviewed a lot of sales managers and owners of printing companies, and that helped me craft my presentation, my program, how I talked about what I did, to see what their issues were. Then slowly I shifted into financial services, because when my book on referrals came out, it just turned into be a great match. That was 17 years ago. And so I interviewed a lot of managing partners, general agents, office managers, brokers, insurance agents, P&C folks, bankers, all from all walks of life within financial services. And that, of course, helped me create a better program for the people. So doing these market surveys can be very powerful. And if you're new or in this business, consider teaming up with a veteran, so you can bring a little more confidence and credibility in the form of this veteran that's with you. And then if you have an opening to a niche market, the veteran gets a chance to tap into that niche market that maybe you as a younger advisor couldn't. If you're an older advisor, more experienced, then again look for newer advisors that might have a niche there that's ready for you and the two of you to go into. Identify and attend the associations, the meetings. You might be able to have an associate membership. You might be able to speak. You might be able to write for their newsletter. Every niche, every target market has what we call industry influencers or market influencers. These are quite often the presidents, the past presidents, the people who've been on the board, who are on the board, committee members, people who take leadership roles in the association. Sometimes it's the most successful members. And so whenever I've gone after different kinds of niches and niches within niches, I've always tried to find out who are the most successful people. And I've tried to serve them in some way. Maybe not sell them anything, just serve them, help them, give them some information. And of course what happens, they start to talk about me. And these are the 800-pound gorillas in the room, right? These are the people that no one can ignore. And so you serve them and they become advocates for you. So it's a tremendous strategy. Read the publications, read particularly the advertisements. I found that when I target niches and I read the advertisements, I learn a lot about the industry. I learn about what their pains are, what their angst, where their angst is around, because advertisements, people advertising are usually people who have a solution to some problem. And so you can find out what their problems are by looking at the people advertising the solutions to those problems. I already mentioned deliver education, sponsorship. Look for ways to apply your expertise. So for instance, a philanthropic and community service, they love advisors. They love guys and gals who know how to work a calculator and have a bent for numbers and finance. If you do a philanthropic organization, community service, you might even think in terms of being involved in fundraising, because when you're doing fundraising for this organization, you're meeting people who usually are pretty well heeled. They're used to writing checks to benefit a group, and then you're there, and you're not there as the advisor, you're there as a representative of the group, but ultimately they're going to ask you what you do, and when you're not raising money for the group, and you can find little subtle ways to put it into the situation. You have some advice about different ways they can give that are more tax advantaged. So then they get a sense of who you are. And I've seen many advisors that take fundraising leads in organizations and turn into opportunities to get new clients. Now, in dealing with a niche market, whether it's owners of a company in a specific industry, whether it's employees within a company, the goal is not activity, right? The goal is results. The goal is so you got to always keep looking for those ways to be appropriately proactive to turn these business friendships into relationships. Let me go back a second. So, for instance, let's say you're involved in a philanthropic organization, or you're an association targeting a niche, and you don't want to come on too strong, but you want an opportunity to maybe talk business with these folks. Here's all you got to do. All you got to say, hey, George, something I've been wanting to run by you. I've actually been a little reluctant to talk to you about this because I didn't want you to think that, this was the only reason why I'm part of this organization. I think it's a great organization. And in getting to know you and some of the things you've talked about, I have a feeling I could be a pretty good resource for you. Can we get together at some point? Maybe I can buy you lunch and we can talk a little bit about your situation and my situation and see if it makes sense for us to talk a little business down the road. And so you kind of come in low key, confessing that you've been reluctant to bring it up because you don't want to hurt the relationship. People appreciate that. It's very honest. And then presenting yourself, I thought, I could be a great resource for you. Great word, resource, proactive but not pushy. So I can be a great resource for you. Can we talk about it? Some people say yes, some people say no, right? You don't hit them up hard, you just kind of in a soft way. And so you can turn a lot of this work into business by being a little proactive. Any kind of group you're in, whether it's an affinity group, a philanthropic group, a industry association, you take on some leadership roles so people can see you doing a good job. Al Fox took on a leadership role in his country club. Didn't talk business, but it came out over time that Al was a very successful advisor. And so it took about 7 years or so before people started approaching him. And they say, Al, you've been great about not really promoting what you do. I mean, I got a clear idea of what you do and who you are, but I've appreciated the approach you've taken here at the club, and we have a situation coming up. We're getting ready to sell the business, and I would like to get your perspective. And Al gets a new client, and then what happens is in these affinity groups, whether it's a country club or wherever it is, once one or two of these people work with you, that's when the popcorn starts to pop a little bit, and it heats up, and other people, they start to tell other people about you, and it becomes easier and easier to get unsolicited referrals and people who fit your niche. So if you want to keep the referral ideas coming, here are a few places we can help you out. We have our free newsletter, the Referral Minute. Just go to referralminute.com. We have a store. We sell our books and ebooks and audios and stuff at Referral Coach Store. And we have a new video-based kind of a self-study program called referralchampions.com, and it's a great self-study video program. I recommend actually, rather than do a self-study, you do a study with a buddy. So basically you find a colleague, somebody who needs to learn more about referrals too, and you go in and get referral champions together, or you get a referral success kit together. Your investment is less, and then you have someone to brainstorm with and to set goals and to hold each other accountable and to celebrate your successes, and so you get that referral buddy. So before I wrap it up totally, Justin, any questions coming in that we can answer?
You probably sort of touched on it, but can you be in 2 or 3 niches at the same time?
Yeah, you can. I don't recommend trying to start with 2 or 3 niches at one time. Get one kind of up and running, and then you can replicate the formula within other niches. It depends on the size of the niche. The bigger the niche, then the more likely you don't have to do that, because that niche can feed you quite nicely for a long time. If they're smaller niches, then yes, that makes sense. One may run its course over a period of time as well. But you do one at a time, and once you get up and running, then you can replicate and you learn a lot, and then you can do the next one. Now, I'll just give you an example, though. Mickey Rosenzweig did this, or tried to do this. He had done so well with physicians, he decided he was going to find another niche and kind of do the same thing with another niche and replicate the formula. But when he started doing that, he realized how good he had it. He realized how well he knew people in his niche and how much he talked their language and their jargon. And through the questions he asked, he built credibility, just because he asked questions that revealed he knew their situation. And so what he decided to do, rather than try to replicate it in a new niche, he actually bought a practice that was also devoted to physicians. So he kind of doubled down on his commitment. So the simple answer is yes, you can do that. Be careful, though. Don't try to do too much too quickly. Anything else?
I think we are good. Obviously, you've been doing this for so long. You know your material inside and out, and it was very informative, and we certainly appreciate it, Bill.
Well, you bet. So again, if anybody wants to stay in touch later with a question about any part of referrals, whether it's niches or event marketing or anything else, it's Bill at referralcoach.com. I'm here to help, and it's been a pleasure to be with Financial Brokerage, who I know is dedicated to really providing value to everybody and distinguishing themselves with that value. So, Justin, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you to all the webinar participants today, and certainly, again, thanks to Bill for all of his efforts. And on behalf of all of us, if you have any questions, any follow-up whatsoever, the number here at Financial Brokerage is 1-800-397-9999, and I wish everyone a productive day. Thanks again.